Hello everyone, and welcome back to TowerGate, day 56, April the 28th, 2017, Friday. My oh my, the hits just keep on coming. A couple important items for you today. First off, we are now getting some idea about how Susan Rice and probably many of the other people who will be called to testify regarding the surveillance and all things Russia in the House and Senate Intelligence Committee hearings. We're getting some idea how the players are probably going to try to conduct themselves in these hearings. And we got some insight from a tweet that Susan Rice sent out yesterday. She retweeted an article by a left-wing journalist some of you may be familiar with. His name is A.J. Dionne. Mr. Dionne continues to try, as Rachel Maddow and many others, to keep connecting this Russian Trump collusion story. It's the only thing they've got. This is why they continue to hang on to it. But the very fact that Susan Rice tweeted out this comment and the link to this story from E.J. Dionne tells us a lot about what Susan Rice is going to do when she's called to testify, along with her colleagues. They are going to try in the hearings to constantly spin off into the Russian Trump collusion narrative. No matter what question is asked of them in trying to understand what role they may have had in the surveillance of Donald Trump, they are going to constantly, at every opportunity, spin it off, try to spin it off, and move the narrative back to Trump-Russia collusion. They're going to continue to do this over and over again as a way to muddy the water, to confuse you, and to avoid directly dealing with the issue, which is surveillance and Trump. This is one of the reasons why, as you know from previous videos, that I've stated that they should have kept these investigations separate. Take a look at the overall of whether or not Russia had anything to do with our elections or were involved in our elections. That's one issue. The second issue is, was there collusion between Trump and the Russians to throw the election to Trump and steal the election from Hillary? That's a second issue. The third issue would be the surveillance of Trump. No question whether or not that happened. We now know it happened. It's a question of whether or not it was politically motivated and who the individuals were who may have perpetrated this activity and what resources that they used to get it done. And of course the cover-up of the entire thing. So this tells us a lot about what Susan Rice is planning on doing, and it tells us how she and probably others who are going to be called to testify are going to handle themselves. As I said, for them to go there and take the fifth would not look good. And so that's probably not what they're going to do. They probably not showing up after being asked to come and testify also does not look good. So clearly they've come up with a strategy, which is that they'll show up to the hearings, they will testify, but every time that they're asked a question that may have some intent to find out about their activity involving the surveillance of Trump, they will simply spin it and try to take it back to the issue that they want to advance, which is the false narrative of Trump and Russia collusion. This is how they're going to play their strategy. And it's pretty clear by the tweet from Susan Rice continuing to perpetuate the false narrative of Russia-Trump collusion. Excuse me. So that's item one. Next item. Do you remember when Nunes went over and took a look at that intelligence and all the people on that intelligence committee went apeshit? Most notably Adam Schiff and the Democrats. Well, as I mentioned to you in a couple of videos ago, the White House has made available to any member of that committee that wants to come over and take a look at that intelligence that Nunes looked at is welcome to do so. But it appears that only Adam Schiff and one other Democrat have taken the time to go over and review that intelligence. So now as the hearings approach us, there's 5 Democrats that sit on that House Intelligence Committee that have not even taken the time to go over and look at this intelligence, despite the fact that they raised holy hell because they were kept out of the loop. But now that they've had the opportunity to go over and look at that intelligence, they seem to have no interest. Why do you think that is? Well, it's because probably Schiff has informed them exactly what he learned from that. And apparently whatever he learned from that is not good for his team, because he has basically ziplocked it, and he hasn't been doing very many interviews. And when he does, he doesn't want to talk about this issue, because he would rather not have to dance around and try to spin around and put himself in a position where he makes some sort of a statement which can be later proven untrue and makes him look bad. That's one reason. But it's also, and the reason why these 5 Democrats have not looked at this intelligence is because they have no interest whatsoever in pursuing a line of questioning that has anything to do with the surveillance of Donald Trump. They are totally locked into a strategy with their cohorts and their fellow conspiracists to keep shifting this narrative in the hearings back to Trump and Russia collusion. This is the entire game plan that they're going to run. Every time the Republican on that committee tries to dig into getting some answers as to what may have happened with this surveillance, the Democrats on the committee are simply going to try to muddy the water and revert back to the narrative of Trump-Russia collusion. So this is what we're going to see in these hearings coming up. And as I've stated, this is why these hearings are like all hearings, whether it's Benghazi, Fast and Furious, or any of these other hearings. They're not designed to get to the truth. They're designed to put on a dog and pony show, score a few political points, and cover everything up. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, all these people who sit on these committees, all these inside the Beltway swamp monsters, are all playing on the same team. And as a result, cover-up is what they do, revealing the lies and the crimes of the deep state that feeds and clothes them will never be part of their agenda. You can be assured of that. That's why I'm here. That's why all you are here. But there's good news. There's very good news. It appears that Donald Trump understands exactly what I just told you. He knows that these committees are not going to try to get to the bottom of the surveillance. He knows exactly how big this story is. He knows the crimes that took place. He knows the end game. And I'm now going to give you some information that proves this is true. We learned yesterday that Trump and his attorney, Michael Cohen, are planning on filing a lawsuit against Buzzfeed and Christopher Steele. Buzzfeed, of course, being the publication that first leaked the dossier. And of course, Christopher Steele is the former head of the GCHQ, the British version of the NSA, who is the one who put together the dossier. Now, yesterday, I told you in that video that Christopher Steele had came out and released his legal brief. Now, why did he release a legal brief, and what the hell is a legal brief? Well, a legal brief is something that whenever you are being sued in a civil suit, which is the case for Christopher Steele. If you remember, about a week ago in a video, I told you that within the information contained in the dossier, which has all, of course, been proven incorrect, there was a man, a Belarusian man, who was named in that dossier as being one of the sources of information for the dossier. Now, once Buzzfeed came out and made this story public, and then CNN came out and reported on the story after it was released by Buzzfeed, this Belarusian man's name was put out there and made public. And of course, he is claiming that he was not the source of any of this false information contained in the dossier. Therefore, he has been subject to slander. And as a result, he has filed a lawsuit against Buzzfeed and Christopher Steele, because Christopher Steele was the one who first put together the dossier, and Buzzfeed was the media source who released it and made it public, followed by CNN, who jumped on the Buzzfeed story and also reported on it. So he's been slandered, and so he's going to sue, and has already filed the lawsuit, the civil suit, against Christopher Steele and Buzzfeed. So what happens is, when a lawsuit is filed against you like that, a civil lawsuit, you are obligated to file a legal brief. This is where you get together with your attorney and you give basically a brief statement of your position. And we learned yesterday that the position of Christopher Steele in his brief and making his defense is that he did put together the dossier. He admits that. But he says that he personally did not pass this dossier off to Buzzfeed. He passed it on to John McCain. Of course, we know there was a middleman involved in that, and I'll be getting into that in a later video. We already talked about it a couple days ago in the chain, as I laid out, but I'll be working on that over the weekend to try to bring more clarity to exactly what that chain was and all the offshoots of that chain, because the story is getting a little complicated. That's why I'm trying to keep us all on track so we stay focused on the target. Because if you can't see the target, you damn sure can't hit it. So, as a result of this brief, Christopher Steele, in his own defense, is stating, number one, he should not be the person targeted in this civil lawsuit. He does admit to being the one who propagated and put together the dossier, but he says he is not the one who released it into the public. In fact, he says in that legal brief that he made it perfectly clear to the person he handed it off to, which is John McCain, likely through a third party, an intermediary between himself and John McCain. He made it perfectly clear that the dossier was unverified. And he made it perfectly clear in his legal brief that he was in no way part of the release of this information to the public, and that he believed, when he passed this dossier to John McCain through a third party, that it was his understanding that this was to be a secret document, only to be viewed by the intelligence community, who was going to be on the final receiving end of it, and therefore he should not be liable for the release of this information, because he says he had nothing to do with it being released. He only created the dossier, passed it on to John McCain, meant only to be seen by intelligence agencies, and it was never his intention for this dossier to be leaked to the public. That is his defense that he lays out in the briefing. So, Trump, obviously, through, I would believe, one of two things is going on here. Either Trump knows in his gut instinct, just like I know, and just like many of you know, that the House and Senate Intelligence Committee are not going to get to the bottom of this any more than they got to the bottom of Benghazi, the IRS scandal, or any other scandal they look into, including another one that we'll be talking about later. Or someone on the House Intelligence Committee has gone to Donald Trump and said to him, hey, I can tell you right now, Mr. President, we're going to have these hearings, but I can tell you right now the plan is to cover this thing up and to make it go away. They really have no intention of getting to the bottom of it. But regardless of whether it's a gut instinct on behalf of Donald Trump, and because he probably knows exactly the entire story, and he wanted it to play out through the Congress, whether it's that or whether someone has told him that that's what the intention is, regardless, Donald Trump understands that these hearings are going to be a dog and pony show. There'll never be any intention to get to the truth. So he is going to play another game. He is going to take the same exact position that this Belarusian man is going to take. So Trump is going to file also, just as this Belarusian man has filed a civil lawsuit against Buzzfeed and Christopher Steele, Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, is now stating that they are currently putting together the information they need to go ahead and move forward, and they're also going to file a civil suit against Christopher Steele and Buzzfeed. And what this does, this takes it out of the hands of the Congress and puts it into civil court. Now, it's not criminal court, it's civil court. But by taking it out of the hands of the Congress and all the power players who are involved, who working together could bury this thing, by putting it into a civil court, there's now going to be two attorneys representing each party in the civil hearing, and you're going to have a judge who's not part of the establishment, who cannot be pressured by the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the Attorney General, the former president, or anyone else. These facts are going to come out. And the questions that they are going to want to find out is they're going to want to follow the entire chain, which is what I'm telling you is the key to this whole thing. Because we do know that Christopher Steele created the dossier. We do know that he passed it to John McCain from a third party. And then we do know that Buzzfeed released it. What we don't know are, specifically the main question, what we don't know is who passed this to Buzzfeed. Who took a document that they knew, probably with a high degree of confidence, that was a fraudulent document, and then passed it on to Buzzfeed so that it would make its way out into the media sphere where news, so-called news, fake news corporations like CNN would pick up on the story and spread it out there. And then it would be picked up by other left-wing news organizations. And the whole point of it being to destroy the candidacy of then candidate Donald Trump, then President-elect Donald Trump, and now President Donald Trump. So this is the question of the day, and this is the question that they know that is never going to be answered by the Congress because they're not going to be interested in getting to the truth. By making this a civil matter, this question is going to have to be answered. Somebody from Buzzfeed, who will be facing the liability of tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars in damages as a result of this, because you have two plaintiffs. You're going to have this Belarusian man who wants to have his name cleared as being a part of any of this, who's going to be looking for tens of millions of dollars. And you're going to have the president, who was the target of this particular dossier. So by putting this into the civil court, it takes it out of the hands of the Congress and guarantees that we will finally find out who leaked that dossier to Buzzfeed. And that is really the question we need to know. Because when you find out who leaked that dossier to Buzzfeed, you will have targeted the center, the kernel of the political operation to destroy the candidacy of Donald Trump. And in doing so, you also learn about the people who are in the circle around that person. These will be people likely from the Department of Justice, the FBI, the intelligence community. And these people will be sucked in, and they will also be brought into civil court to explain this entire scenario of how this dossier was created. Who asked Christopher Steele to create this dossier? How did it make its way through the chain and eventually to Buzzfeed? This is all going to come out in a civil hearing. So the Congress may bury it, but in a civil hearing it will not be buried. The truth will come out. Donald Trump is making a masterstroke here. It looks like he tried to go through the Congress, but now he knows that they're not interested in getting to the truth. So he's going to up the ante. So the stakes are very, very high. Donald Trump obviously knows exactly what's going on, and he's playing hardball, my friends. So, while the Congress may try to kill this story and cover it up, the story will go on. Civil court hearings can sometimes drag out. So as I said in the beginning, this may take a year, 2 years, whatever to play out. But we're going to stay on the story. And now it looks like it's going to move into as a civil matter. Questions will be asked, real questions, by real attorneys actually representing the plaintiffs. And these people will have to answer these questions because this is civil court. This is not a congressional hearing where they can sit there and lie and spin and enjoy the protection of the very people who we're counting on to get to the truth. It's not going to be the case because the person now asking the questions will be representing their client, the plaintiffs, Donald Trump and this Belarusian man. Over the weekend, I will be laying out this in more specific detail in this chain, because there are other offshoots of this chain. It's starting to get a little bit confusing. So I'm going to break it down and make it very clear for you, and I should have that video ready for you on Monday. So stay tuned, and we'll continue to follow the story, and God willing, we'll get to the bottom of it. It's TowerGate, day 56, April 28th, 2017. Don't forget, I'm going to also, again today, I'm going to place a link in the description for the information that came to us from an article in the American Spectator. I'll have the link for that story so you can read it, because what I've given you is a summary, but you can get more specific details if you want to click on the link and read that story in the description below. Just click on Show More. Also, I'm going to include the link again for the campaign to build the border wall, and also the petition to replace Paul Ryan as Speaker of the House. So I'll continue to put those links up as well. So if you want to sign up to replace Paul Ryan, the link will be below the description box in this video. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing it. And thank you again for all the your contribution in the comments section. I enjoy reading your comments and enjoy the questions that you ask. I usually get back to just about anyone who has a question or a comment. So I appreciate your support and for taking part in the conversation. You all have a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.